is always on your mind, but never speaks to you. It's not just a love story waiting to happen. It's a mirror reflecting something deeper inside you. What if his silence isn't rejection, but a lesson about where your energy truly belongs? Sometimes, the most powerful message you will ever receive from a person is not in their words, but in their silence. The human mind is quick to fill that silence with stories. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they care but can't say it. Maybe fate is holding us apart. But neuroscience reminds us, the more we dwell on someone, the more the brain wires itself to believe they are central to our lives, even if they are absent. Eastern wisdom calls this the illusion of grasping, where we hold onto shadows, mistaking them for the substance of life. The truth is, if someone never speaks to you, they are telling you something. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. And when you can hear that message without resistance, you step out of longing and into freedom. When someone is constantly on your mind, it is easy to mistake that mental presence for destiny, deep love, or a sign from the universe. But if we slow down, strip away the romantic illusions, and look through the lens of how the mind truly works, we find something more revealing. The human brain is wired to seek patterns and close loops. Whenever an interaction feels incomplete, such as when someone never talks to you, your mind struggles to resolve that uncertainty. This triggers what psychologists call an open loop, a mental state where you replay scenarios, imagine conversations, and even create stories that never happened, simply to close the gap. Neuroscience confirms that every repeated thought strengthens the neural pathways that carry it, making it easier for the brain to return to that same thought again and again. This is why some people occupy a disproportionate space in your mind, even if your real life contact with them is minimal. In these moments, it is not always love speaking. It is the brain's habit loop pulling you in. Imagine meeting someone briefly at a gathering. You shared a smile, maybe a short conversation, and then they disappeared into the crowd. Days later, their image replays in your mind, not because you know them deeply, but because that interaction was unresolved. Your brain, in its need for completion, starts replaying and building on that fragment. You imagine their voice, their laugh, the details you didn't get to learn. The more you think, the more the mind convinces you that this person is somehow important. What is happening inside you is less about the other person's actions and more about the brain's natural reinforcement process. Each time you feed that thought with attention, you deepen the emotional imprint, and what started as curiosity can turn into a mental habit. This attachment loop is intensified by the emotional centers of the brain, particularly the amygdala, which becomes more active when emotions such as longing, uncertainty, or desire are involved. When there is no direct closure, when they do not speak to you, when they leave questions unanswered, the emotional charge grows stronger. Eastern philosophy has long spoken of this phenomenon, though it uses different language. It describes the mind as a restless monkey, always seeking to hold on to something, always chasing what is just out of reach. The more the mind chases, the more exhausted the spirit becomes. Yet the pursuit continues, not because it brings fulfillment, but because it has become familiar. When we are unaware of this process, it is easy to believe that thinking about someone constantly must mean they are special, or that fate is weaving your paths together. But the deeper truth is often simpler and less romantic. What we dwell on is what the mind is trained to return to. Repeated focus strengthens emotional bonds, whether they are based on reality or imagination. That is why people can form intense attachments to celebrities they have never met or characters in books they have only read about. It is not the depth of the relationship, but the repetition of thought, that creates the illusion of closeness. This brings us to the illusion of connection through thought. The mind has a strange ability to mistake constant internal focus for actual relational depth. You may feel as though you know this person well because you have replayed their expressions in your mind, imagined conversations with them, and filled in the blanks with your own interpretations. This imagined intimacy can feel very real because the brain does not always distinguish sharply between vivid thoughts and lived experiences. In fact, research shows that visualizing an interaction activates similar neural networks as having the real interaction itself. This is why someone you think about daily can feel emotionally close, even if in reality they are distant or even unaware of your inner connection. The problem is that this imagined closeness often hides a painful truth. The emotional investment is not mutual. The connection exists primarily in one mind. This is not to say it is meaningless. Our inner experiences do shape our emotions and energy, but mistaking this inner connection for a two-way relationship can lead to disappointment, confusion, and even self-doubt. The danger is that while you are feeding your mind with imagined moments, you may miss the real opportunities for connection with people who are actually present and engaged. One example is the person who notices someone from a distance, at work, in the neighborhood, or in a social group. The attraction or curiosity begins innocently enough, but over time, they find themselves daydreaming about that person, interpreting every small gesture as significant. A brief glance becomes a sign of interest. A polite nod feels loaded with meaning. All the while, there is little to no actual conversation taking place. This is the illusion. At work, the mind constructs a relationship where reality has not yet built one. The emotional impact can be intense because the imagined version of the person has been shaped perfectly to align with your desires, expectations, and fantasies. But when reality eventually steps in, perhaps when the person's true personality or disinterest becomes clear, the contrast can be jarring. Eastern wisdom warns against becoming entangled in these illusions, teaching that attachment to a mental image can be more binding than attachment to the real person. In the real world, people are complex, flawed, and unpredictable. In the mind's world, they can be exactly as you want them to be. This is why the imagined connection can sometimes feel even more satisfying than reality, until reality inevitably enters and the illusion breaks. In relationships, this dynamic can quietly drain your emotional energy. When your thoughts are consistently focused on someone who does not engage with you, you are investing a precious resource, your attention, into a space where it cannot grow into mutual connection. In energetic terms, it is like pouring water into soil that cannot sustain life. Over time, this imbalance can lead to feelings of emptiness, frustration, or even resentment. But the deeper harm is that while your energy is locked in this one-sided space, it is not available for self-development, creativity, or the people who are actively choosing you. Breaking this cycle begins with awareness. Simply noticing how often your thoughts return to this person is the first step toward regaining control. This is not about suppressing thoughts or shaming yourself for having them, but about seeing them for what they are, a mental habit, not an unquestionable truth. You can then begin to retrain the mind by shifting your focus toward activities, goals, and people that nourish you in the present. Over time, new neural pathways begin to form, and the old attachment loop weakens. It is also essential to recognize that the absence of communication is itself a form of communication. If someone never speaks to you, that silence carries meaning. It may reflect their own limitations, disinterest, or life circumstances. But whatever the reason, it signals that the connection is not currently mutual. Accepting this without resentment allows you to redirect your energy toward relationships that are alive, reciprocal, and real. And in doing so, you begin to experience the freedom that comes when the mind is no longer chasing illusions. Even in the absence of spoken words, there is always communication happening. The human nervous system is constantly reading subtle cues, the way someone's eyes move, the way their posture shifts when you enter a room, the way their energy feels when they are near. This is the realm of silent communication, where much is said without being spoken. Modern neuroscience acknowledges that we are deeply influenced by these nonverbal signals, even if we cannot always articulate them. Our mirror neurons, designed to reflect and empathize with the emotional states of others, pick up on these cues instinctively. Without realizing it, you can feel drawn to or repelled by someone simply based on the emotional energy they carry. In relationships, this can create a powerful pull towards someone who has never said a word to you, because your body is responding to the unspoken language between you. Yet, while silent communication is real, it can also be misleading if our own emotional state is unbalanced. Eastern philosophy teaches that when our inner energy is unsettled, we may project our hopes, fears, and unresolved emotions onto others. This means that sometimes the sense of connection you feel is not purely about the other person. It is a mirror reflecting your own internal state. If you are longing for love, you may interpret a fleeting glance as deep interest. If you feel unworthy, you might see someone's distance as proof of rejection, even if they are simply distracted or introverted. Emotional energy is powerful, but without awareness, it can color our perception in ways that distort the truth. There are countless stories of people who fall in love, not with a person they truly know, but with the energy they think that person represents. For instance, someone might encounter a stranger in a coffee shop, exchange a warm smile, and feel an instant, unexplainable spark. Over days or weeks, that spark turns into a quiet obsession. They imagine the stranger's life, their personality, their values, all built from a single, silent moment. The stranger has done nothing more than be present in the same space, but in the mind of the observer, they have become a figure of immense significance. The silent communication here is not one-sided. Both parties may have felt the warmth of the exchange, but the meaning each attaches to it can be vastly different. Without actual interaction, the mind fills in the blanks with its own story. This is why cultivating emotional balance is essential. When you carry yourself with grounded, centered energy, the signals you send are clear and consistent, and the signals you receive are easier to interpret accurately. People can sense when you are at ease with yourself, and that calm energy often draws genuine connections without you needing to chase them. In contrast, if your energy is restless, anxious, or overly focused on one person, others can sense that too, often leading them to pull away. The unspoken conversation between energies is constant, and becoming aware of it gives you a quiet form of influence that does not rely on words. But beyond the level of silent signals lies an even more subtle trap: the projection of our own desires onto another person. The mind is a master at turning fragments into full pictures. If someone catches your interest but does not speak to you, you may begin to fill in the missing information with your own imagination. This is not always conscious. You might see qualities in them that they have never shown, because those qualities are what you hope to find. This is the projection trap, where you are less attracted to who they truly are and more attracted to who you believe they might be. In psychology, projection often happens because the human mind dislikes uncertainty. When we lack information about someone, we tend to fill the gaps with what feels comfortable or appealing to us. If you have an ideal image of the kind of partner you want, your mind may attach that image to the person you think about constantly. The danger is that you might ignore red flags or overlook signs of incompatibility because the mental image is so strong. This is why someone can feel perfect in your thoughts but become a very different person in reality. Consider a person who notices a quiet co-worker in the office. They rarely speak, but every now and then their paths cross in the hallway and polite smiles are exchanged. Over time, the observer begins to imagine the co-worker as kind, intelligent, and deeply compatible, perhaps because they carry themselves in a way that seems gentle and thoughtful. Months pass, and the imagined connection grows richer in the mind. Then, one day, they finally have a conversation, and the reality is nothing like the fantasy. The co-worker may be pleasant, but their values, humor, and outlook on life are entirely different from what had been imagined. The disappointment here is not because the person was unkind or deceptive, but because reality had to dismantle the illusion. The projection trap does not only lead to disappointment, it can keep you emotionally stuck. When you are busy imagining the best version of someone, you might delay taking steps to meet people who are actually available and compatible. You may convince yourself that the imagined person is worth waiting for, even if there is no evidence of mutual interest. This keeps you living in a mental relationship rather than an actual one. In some cases, people spend years holding on to a fantasy, not realizing that what they are truly attached to is not the person, but the feeling they have created around them. Breaking free from projection begins with the willingness to see reality without layering it with your own story. This requires both emotional courage and humility. Emotional courage, because you must be willing to face the possibility that the connection you feel is one-sided. Humility, because you must accept that your mind, as intelligent as it is also prone to creating narratives that are more about you than about the other person. Eastern wisdom teaches that when you release the need for someone to fit your imagined picture, you open the door to seeing them as they truly are. And more importantly, you free yourself to form connections based on truth, not illusion. The art of discerning between genuine silent communication and projected fantasy lies in your ability to pause, reflect, and observe without rushing to conclusions. When you notice that someone occupies your thoughts, ask yourself, what am I really drawn to? Is it their actions, their words, their consistent behavior, or is it the way I feel when I think about them? If it is mostly the latter, then it is likely that your own inner landscape is painting much of the picture. This does not mean the attraction is false, but it does mean that part of it comes from within you, not solely from them. Understanding this brings a quiet strength. It reminds you that much of the connection you feel begins with your own emotional energy, and that energy is something you can choose to direct wisely. When you master this awareness, you no longer get lost in someone else's silence. You recognize it, you respect it, and you remain open to what is real, whether that is a relationship that grows naturally or a lesson that strengthens your self-understanding. When someone's presence lingers in your thoughts more than feels natural, it is not simply a matter of emotion. It is a reflection of how your attention has been trained, often without you realizing it. The human mind has a tendency to wander toward what is unresolved, unfamiliar, or emotionally charged. Neuroscience explains that our brains are shaped by repetition. The more often you think about something or someone, the more you strengthen the neural circuits that carry that thought. Over time, this becomes the brain's default pathway. Just like a trail in the forest becomes clearer and easier to walk the more it is used, your thoughts begin to return to the same person almost automatically. This is why reclaiming inner space requires discipline over where your attention goes. It is not only a matter of the heart, but a practice of training the mind. Mind discipline is not about suppressing feelings or pretending you are unaffected. It is about understanding the mechanics of thought and emotion, so you are no longer a passive passenger in your own inner world. Imagine your attention as a powerful spotlight in a dark theater. Wherever you direct it, the stage is illuminated, and everything else fades into the background. If you keep pointing that spotlight at one figure, especially someone who does not speak to you or engage with you, then they will dominate your mental landscape, whether or not they deserve that space. Training your attention means learning to shift that spotlight intentionally to illuminate the parts of your life that bring growth, connection, and fulfillment. One way to begin this process is to simply notice how often your mind drifts toward this person. The goal is not to judge yourself, but to observe without interference. You might discover that thoughts arise most when you are idle, when you feel lonely, or when you are avoiding something else in your life. This awareness is powerful because it shows you that the thoughts are often less about the person and more about the state you are in when they appear. In moments of emptiness or distraction, the mind looks for familiar patterns, and if thinking of them has become a habit, it will return there like water flowing to the lowest point. Consider someone who spends hours replaying brief moments with a person they barely know. A conversation that lasted minutes, a shared glance across a room. Each replay feels vivid, almost like it is happening again, because the brain does not clearly distinguish between intense imagination and lived experience. Over time, these mental repetitions deepen the sense of attachment, even though the real connection has not progressed. In this situation, the challenge is not to erase the memory, but to interrupt the cycle of replay. Every time you consciously shift your attention to something nourishing, whether it is a personal goal, a meaningful conversation, or a creative pursuit, you weaken the grip of the old neural pathway and strengthen a new one. Eastern traditions have long understood this principle. They teach that where the mind goes, energy follows, and where energy goes, life grows. If your mental energy is locked on someone who is absent, that is where your inner resources are flowing. It is like watering a plant that is not yours to tend. No matter how much care you give, it will never bloom for you. Reclaiming that energy means recognizing that your thoughts are a resource and you have the choice to invest them in places where they can truly flourish. Practical strategies for mind discipline do not require grand rituals. They begin with small, consistent actions. Start by setting gentle boundaries for your attention. When you catch yourself drifting into familiar thoughts about them, pause and redirect your focus. This could mean engaging in a physical activity like walking or stretching, which draws you back into the present moment. Physical movement is a powerful tool because it shifts both your mental and emotional state. It signals to the body and brain that you are not trapped in a thought. You are free to move and choose. Another practice is deliberate attention training through mindfulness or breathwork. By focusing on your breathing for even a few minutes, you anchor your mind to something neutral and constant. The breath does not demand an emotional response, and this stability can break the momentum of obsessive thought. Over time, this practice rewires the brain's attention networks, making it easier to return to the present without being pulled into mental loops. It is also important to fill the space you reclaim with meaningful pursuits. The mind dislikes a vacuum. If you remove one focus without replacing it, it will simply find another to cling to. Identify areas of your life that have been neglected while your attention has been consumed. This might be a friendship that needs nurturing, a skill you have always wanted to develop, or a personal health goal. When you actively engage in these areas, you create a sense of forward movement, and the pull of the old thought patterns begins to weaken naturally. There is a deeper layer to this process as well. Often, the person who dominates your thoughts is linked to an unmet need or desire within yourself. It could be a longing for validation, a desire for emotional intimacy, or a craving for excitement. By turning your attention inward and asking what this attachment is really about, you begin to address the root rather than the symptom. If the core need is for validation, you can cultivate self-acknowledgement through journaling your achievements or speaking kindly to yourself. If it is intimacy, you can invest in relationships where mutual care and presence are available. If it is excitement, you can seek new experiences that stimulate your sense of aliveness. Quotes from both science and ancient wisdom point to the same truth. You become what you consistently think about. The philosopher James Allen wrote, "A man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts." Neuroscience adds that thoughts shape the brain itself, altering the physical structure through a process called neuroplasticity. This means that by choosing where your attention goes, you are not just changing your mood, you are reshaping your mind. This shift requires patience. Just as a deep groove in a record takes time to smooth out, deeply ingrained thought patterns take time to change. You may find that some days the old attachment feels as strong as ever. This is not a failure, it is simply the mind reverting to what is familiar. The key is to return again and again to your chosen focus, trusting that each small redirection is part of a larger transformation. Ultimately, training your attention is an act of self-respect. It is a way of saying to yourself, "My mental space is valuable, my emotional energy is sacred. I will not hand them over carelessly." When you begin to live from this place, you notice that the pull toward those who are absent loses its power. You no longer feel at the mercy of thoughts you did not choose. Instead, you stand in the center of your awareness, able to decide who and what will share that space with you. There comes a point when silence speaks louder than any declaration, when someone does not make the effort to reach out, when their absence is constant and their words are few or non-existent. It is not always an act of cruelty. It is often an unspoken truth. In relationships, people reveal their intentions through both their actions and their inaction. It can be tempting to keep searching for hidden meanings, to tell yourself that there must be a deeper reason why they have not spoken to you. Perhaps they are shy. Perhaps they are busy. Perhaps they are waiting for the perfect moment. These thoughts can keep you waiting for weeks, months, or even years. But there is a wisdom in recognizing that what is freely given will come to you without force, and what must be chased constantly is not truly yours to hold. Eastern teachings have long expressed this through the idea that water flows effortlessly toward its path. It does not beg the riverbanks to let it pass. In the same way, a genuine connection finds its way into your life without you having to push against resistance or carry the entire weight of making it happen. When someone chooses to connect with you, it will be evident not in subtle hints or rare moments, but in consistent actions that reflect genuine interest. When those actions are absent, the silence itself becomes the answer. One of the most difficult truths to accept in relationships is that silence is a form of communication. In fact, it can be more honest than words, because words can be manipulated, but absence is harder to disguise. If someone values your presence, they will seek it. If they care to know you, they will make space for you in their life. And if they remain quiet, it is not your role to convince them otherwise. Understanding this is not about developing a cold heart. It is about cultivating a clear mind that sees reality as it is without being clouded by wishful thinking. There is a tendency in human nature to turn waiting into a virtue. People often romanticize patience in love, telling themselves that holding on is a sign of loyalty or depth of feeling. While patience is indeed valuable, it must be directed towards something that grows in return. Waiting for someone who is not reaching back is not patience. It is self-neglect disguised as devotion. Every moment spent hoping for words that never come is a moment that could be invested in relationships where communication flows naturally. Consider the story of a woman who met a man at a mutual friend's gathering. They spoke briefly, shared laughter, and exchanged contact information. Weeks passed without a word from him, yet she thought about him daily. She replayed their short conversation, searching for clues that he might be interested. She told herself that perhaps he was simply waiting for the right time. She avoided meeting new people because she did not want to miss her chance with him. Months later, she learned that he had been dating someone else the entire time. It was not that he disliked her. He simply had no intention of pursuing a deeper connection. His silence had been the message, but she had chosen to read it as suspense rather than truth. The pain she felt was not only from his absence, but from the realization that she had ignored the quiet truth in favor of a hopeful story. Accepting silence as an answer requires courage. It means letting go of the stories you have built, the what-ifs that keep you holding on. It means facing the possibility that someone you care for may not see you in the same light. But this acceptance is also liberating. When you stop waiting for a call that never comes, you free yourself to hear the voices of those who are already speaking to you. You begin to notice the people who check in, who make time, who offer their presence without you having to pull it from them. In psychology, there is a principle known as opportunity cost. The idea that when you invest time, energy, or resources in one thing, you lose the opportunity to invest them elsewhere. The same is true for emotional energy. If you are pouring your attention into someone who does not reciprocate, you are closing yourself off to the opportunities for connection with those who would. The emotional space taken up by waiting could be the same space where new, healthy relationships take root. Some people hold on because they believe that persistence will eventually change the other person's mind. While persistence has its place in life, in matters of the heart, it must be mutual to be healthy. Connection cannot be built by one person alone. It requires two willing participants who are both investing in the same direction. Without this reciprocity, persistence becomes chasing, and chasing erodes dignity over time. There is also a deeper layer to why people sometimes cling to silence instead of moving forward. Often, the person they are waiting for has become a symbol, representing love, validation, or a certain ideal they have been searching for. Letting go of that person can feel like letting go of the hope for those things entirely. But in reality, letting go of someone who does not choose you does not mean letting go of love. It means making room for a love that chooses you willingly. It is worth remembering the words often attributed to an old proverb: "What is meant for you will not pass you by." This does not mean that love requires no effort at all, but it does mean that the right connections will not require you to beg for attention or guess at their intentions. They will come with clarity, even if the path takes time. Silence, in that context, is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood. It helps you sort what is truly aligned with you from what only exists in longing. When you begin to shift from waiting to living, something remarkable happens. Your energy changes. People notice when you are engaged with life rather than stuck in suspension. Your conversations deepen, your days feel richer, and your sense of self-worth grows. Instead of measuring your value by whether one person speaks to you, you measure it by how fully you are present in your own life. This is not about ignoring your feelings. It is about honoring them enough to place them where they can grow. Imagine two gardens. In one, you water the soil daily, but nothing ever grows because the seeds were never planted. In the other, you tend to the earth, and plants rise to meet the sun, offering shade, color, and life in return. The first garden is what it is like to invest in someone who does not respond. You may work hard, but the ground remains barren. The second garden is what happens when you give your care and attention to those who are willing to meet you halfway. The choice between them is not always easy, especially when you have already poured much into the first, but the difference in outcome is undeniable. Moving from waiting to living is a gradual process. It begins with small decisions. To answer the friend who has been inviting you to join them, to start a new hobby, to spend an afternoon in a place that inspires you. It is about redirecting your attention from what is absent to what is present. Each step reinforces the truth that your life is not on hold for anyone. The people meant to be part of your journey will walk alongside you willingly, and those who do not are simply not part of this chapter. In this way, silence ceases to be a source of confusion and becomes a compass. It points you away from what drains you and toward what nourishes you. It teaches you that your energy is too precious to be left waiting in the dark. And it reminds you that the most important voice you can listen to is the one inside you, telling you to keep moving forward. In the end, life will always test you with people, circumstances, and emotions that challenge your patience, your values, and your ability to remain true to yourself. But every challenge is also a mirror, reflecting the depth of your self-respect, the clarity of your boundaries, and the strength of your spirit. You are not here to shrink yourself to fit into the comfort zones of others. You are here to grow, to expand, and to align your actions with the life you truly desire. When you choose dignity over desperation, patience over impulse, and self-worth over temporary approval, you send a silent but powerful message to the worldly. You know who you are, and you will not settle for less than what you deserve. The relationships that remain will be those built on respect and authenticity, not convenience or manipulation. Your greatest power is not in how loudly you demand to be valued, but in how gracefully you walk away from anything that doesn't. And in doing so, you create space for the people, the opportunities, and the love that will honor you in the way you were always meant to be honored.